I've been arrested for cannabis a few times in my adult life. Most recently, though, happened in 2016. I was actually almost shot by the cop that night. So he kind of felt bad and decided not to cooperate with prosecutors who didn't think it was a big charge, regardless, even though there was psychedelics. So there was like a felony possession added to the cannabis possession. But two prosecutors decided not to prosecute. But unfortunately, they rearrested me a year later so they could get those convictions, including those felony convictions. In 2016, one of the nights out here at the oceanfront in Virginia Beach, I was had a couple of drinks. I think I had one. I might have had two. I can't recall right now. But when the officer pulled me over, I made the wrong turn on the right of way. As you may be familiar, there's these two one-way streets, and coming off and on the interstate, a lot of people get confused turning down them. And unfortunately for me that night, there was a cop right there on the corner. I knew I did something wrong. I was trying to make a U-turn to go the right way. This was at the end of the night at 2 a.m. So it was late. Nobody was out there during the off season in November. So he saw me. He pulled me over before I could make the U-turn. He had asked if I had been drinking. I had admitted I had one alcoholic beverage. But then right after that, this was 2016. So obviously they could use that smell of cannabis vehicle or home that was still legal for them to do, unlike how it is now. So he said he smelled something. At that point, I decided to not self-incriminate. So I just, when he asked me about that smell, I didn't really give him a response. But I figured at that point he was going to ask me to step out the vehicle because I'd been, arrested before. So I know that was kind of the standard protocol. So I kind of beat him to the punch going for my seatbelt. And he was by himself. And so he had like almost like he had unholstered his gun. He didn't bring it up. If he brought it up, then the bullets would have came out, right? But I had like a panic attack at that point because I thought I was about to be shot. He took me out of the vehicle, put me in the back of his cruiser, went through the vehicle. That's when they found something in the glove box. I couldn't recall if it was locked at the time, but at that point he had my keys, so he may have unlocked it himself. There's no way for me to know. I don't think he had a camera on his person. I mean, the dashboard cam may have been on, but trying to see through the car, that I don't know. My lawyer never really brought up those points. But yeah, I was arrested for the possession of cannabis, and there was some psychedelics in small amounts. But those were felonies in Virginia. So I was charged with felony possession of those and a subsequent possession of the cannabis. But yeah, he felt bad about it. I mean, when I was leaving the holding cell or booking, he looked back at me as if like the best way I can describe it as if he shot his dog or something. I don't know. Like he just did something really bad and he felt
Did he actually fire his weapon?
no, he did not fire his weapon,
Okay.
but he got close. He unholstered. He got spooked by me making that kind of movement, but without him ordering me to do it. Like the words, I think, like he was literally about to say, he was like, "All right now," and then I was like, "Okay," he's about to tell me to take my seatbelt
Yeah,
off.
you were just okay. This is the next step because you had been, you just knew
Yeah, I understood. I
you were
mean,
trying to
even,
cooperate. You were trying to cooperate, but it
yeah,
took him by surprise, you know.
yeah, and he was, by himself, so to his credit. But what I found out from my lawyer is that he had decided not to cooperate with the prosecutors. And these were the lower level prosecutors. You're not dealing with the city prosecutor, the Commonwealth attorney, right? Or the assistant Commonwealth attorney for those cases. So, two different prosecutors decided this is not worth us time. He's already been arrested for this before. He seems never been violent charges or arrests or convictions. So we're going to go ahead and no process. Some people may be familiar with that here, is that it means decide not to prosecute. But my lawyer told me when they said that they could rearrest me. And 364 days later, they rearrested me on a secret arrest warrant without telling my lawyer, not sending anything in the mail, or calling or whatever. They just showed up to my house. My mom picked up, opened the door. They got inside and woke me up, and I had to get rebonded out. I had to go back to jail, rebond, get a new trial. But the new trial did have some of the top prosecutors with the city and one of the top judges. So I was seeing, it was the assistant Commonwealth attorney handling my case. The judge I was seeing is one of the judges that deals with like murders and all the most violent crimes in our city. So I was in a tough pickle. But my lawyer told me what happened is that they went up to that officer who arrested me, and they went up to him and said, "You got to play ball. We want these convictions." And he said no. And so they went to his sergeant, and his sergeant said, "I'm going to defend my officer here, and I'm going to agree. We don't want to play ball." And so they went even another level. The assistant Commonwealth attorney, she went to the lieutenant. And so the lieutenant said, "Hey, you all play nice or you're off the force." And so I found out later on that the officer does not is no longer employed by the city. They wouldn't tell me if he was fired or if he transferred or just quit the force. I don't know. To this day, I do not know. I never pursued a FOIA request, but I do know that he stuck to his guns. But unfortunately for me, he still got those drugs tested. And so
Okay.
it was just sitting in his desk. He just never gave it to the prosecutors, but it was in his possession.
And what
And
did that do?
somehow
Why was that unfortunate? That because,
that's what they used in my new trial. That was the evidence was
okay, I see.
is that and like the statement that he made, like the paragraph or two that he had to type up
So you got the
immediately.
sense that he didn't want your
No,
case to be prosecuted, but it came out of
absolutely.
nowhere. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so the first time I was arrested for cannabis was in 2003 when I first became an adult, showing my age there. But yeah, it was out. I was just finishing high school, and was out and about. There was actually a neighbor, friend of ours. I was in a car with other folks, and he had actually been in trouble before. Was a criminal informant with Chesapeake Police Department, and actually called the cops on us. And they caught us with a very small amount, like joint or two, and we had to do the ASAP First Offenders Program separately, each individual for that incident. He was my first arrest and subsequent arrest when I was a young adult. One of my lawyers at the time, I'd used a lot of court-appointed attorneys in Chesapeake, and one of them told me at the time, the last arrest that he had that I had under him, he said, "This guy, they might not have your name or picture on the wall, but they probably start off each shift if he's the guy, leading it, because obviously he worked his rank up to detective at one point. So he became a lead guy probably, and my lawyer said that he was probably telling people, look out for this car. He's always possessing, and he's non-violent, so you don't have to worry about this guy
Easy,
pulling
like
the gun
easy
on you."
pickings, easy.
Yes.
Yeah, I see.
The officer who arrested me, his name was Officer Blunt, but it's spelled Ount. But he was actually targeting me. So during my early adulthood life, I was actually arrested a few times by him in particular. He became Detective Blunt by the last time he arrested me. Let's just put it that way. And yeah, it made it hard for my employment throughout the years. Because the first time it was a first offenders program that I did pass, but then there was another incident, and then there was another time I was set up by a friend who was a criminal informant. That time, unfortunately, they did charge me with a felony PWID because, well, it's a small amount compared to how the laws are now. Right now, the amount that I had would just been a fine. But back then, they were able to charge me for a felony. So once again, that hurt me with my employment and deciding what I want to do for my higher education because while I got my 4-year degree, I really contemplated if I should even go into a master's or a PhD. But after consultation with myself and others, I decided to do it because I figured, well, down the road, there'll be a certain amount of time to where, as I mentioned earlier, background checks won't matter as long as I stay out of trouble. And so that was my goal. And now I am reaching that goal. There
Okay.
was a lot of strain on my family with my arrests, dealing with, getting, I did serve a little bit of time here and there. Nothing, exorbitant amount, but a couple of months for one and a couple of months for another. So yeah, that affected, it strained the relationship with my dad and my mom. They're divorced, but yeah, dealing with living with both of them and seeing them both, quite often. But yeah, that was a hard strain, but thankfully, they've always given me chances and helped me out the best that they could. But yeah, I think there's still that stigma, even with trying to get legitimate into the industry right now. My dad, I would say, is a little bit less with it, just because he's invested in some of these stocks in the past. So he's the kind of a business guy, so he understands like how it is legitimate to a certain level now. But with my mom, I think there's still kind of that stigma.
Still some.
Yeah, because
Is
she
it
just
because
doesn't.
of the cannabis, or what do you think it is? Like where,
I, I think part of it is that, especially yeah, with them, like with
or
my
is
dad, even though he invests into those stocks, he doesn't like the smell, even though he used to partake as well into his late adult life. Like when I was living with him at one point in high school and young adult, I'd seen it,
yeah.
So even my cousins pointed it out when they would come visit. They're like, you haven't noticed, like every day before dinner, he's like goes outside.
Funny.
Um, but since then, I've been really active in the advocacy world for cannabis. I've always kind of I've done research papers, growing up in high school. But yeah, I've been volunteering, knocking doors on a volunteer and on a professional level for candidates who have so I want to get some experience working in the existing medical, but next year there should be another bill been drafted the previous 2 years, and if we get a new governor, hopefully from a different persuasion politically, that they will sign that bill into law, and I should hopefully be able to get a lottery to where get grants and loans to help get my business off the ground. And maybe even through an apprenticeship through an existing medical. So that's why I really want to get a job in the existing medical so I can have that work experience and the relationship with one of these MSOs, and then they can take me under their wing and help me develop my business.
Nice.
And yeah, and hopefully in the future, because I've been arrested for it, if we can get the recreational adult use micro businesses with that touch of social equity, I should hopefully start a business next year. Right now, I'm currently trying to get in the existing medical. I've taken a course to get my pharmacy tech certification, about to take that test here very shortly. I'm studying for it each day. But yeah, so I'm hopefully get a job working in the industry now that my background check will pass. It's been of 7 years, so that's usually when all those things work to initiate. Yeah, so I just recently wrote a research paper in my senior research report for high school. My mom was nice enough to buy me High Times magazines growing up in high school. I'd partaken a little bit here and there in high school as well. So I was familiar with it and learning about what's been going on in our country regarding it, and was just really frustrated because I even expressed this in some of my group therapy that was court mandated. Um, it, my, counselor didn't like it that I would bring this up, but I was just saying, how cannabis shouldn't be as illegal as it was. I mean, at this time, even having a misdemeanor possession really affected me in terms of job employment. So it really just made it hard to where I mean I still went to TCC and ODU to get a degree in psychology, but I knew that I was going to have trouble down the road, and it was very hard. I was working sort of, industry jobs with no ladder to succeed, into higher positions for the majority of my adult life.
So the charge when you were 18, that affected your education. Like you, that kind of closed some doors for education for you. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, in terms of what I would want to do, potentially, I really just decided to go into psychology because that was something that I was passionate about. And I thought, well, maybe I can get into the cannabis space in some way, whether it's advocacy or research or something, because I figured that there would be there mind the jet if you can hear that, but I figured that there would be a space for me because I was already seeing it, reading the High Times magazines and researching stuff online, as the internet became more established with finding these organizations. So I just told myself, well, maybe certain doors have closed and what I would want to do in my future, but let me try to get into these spaces where it's going to be more friendly towards people like myself.
So
Yeah, yeah. So the PWID possession with cannabis, that was in 2010. So that's when I made the decision to go ahead and still go to grad school. But unfortunately for me, I was accepted in a program I didn't have the prereqs for. But I did get some experience doing research with cannabis, particularly with animal rodent models, where I did, Barnes maze and tetrad tests. Wow, yeah. So I think there was a passive approach that I did when I was younger, like writing those research papers, reading magazines, maybe talking about it on Facebook or whatever. But I would say 2017, 2016, when I had my final arrest, because I, you know, in 2016, there was already states that had the recreational markets thriving. And so I also went to an event in DC where DC, as that being the closest locality that started changing those laws. I went to an event there. It was actually on my birthday, which is 4/19, the day before 4/20. So I would say those two events, when I went to DC and when I was last arrested in 2016, that's when I started doing stuff with national advocacy groups, also with trying to help candidates get elected to change the laws in our Commonwealth.
was it something about that 2016 arrest that really, shifted your activism or your motivation to get involved?
I mean, how it was no process and I was rearrested. It really just put a sour taste in my mouth, knowing that there was this type of the war on drugs in general, but in particular with cannabis was still being used as a way to keep people in the system to either be incarcerated or having to pay fines and just trying to keep that recidivism rate continuing because they know once you're in the system, there's a great likelihood that you can keep coming back. And I mean, I am an example of that because of those, conditions that can make it harder to thrive in society once you've been arrested and convicted. And do for a campaign for someone who's trying to get elected into office.
It's really
Uh,
getting the right people in the elected offices.
Yeah, yeah, you got to do your research, and sometimes people do, unfortunately, you hear the stigma of politicians changing what they're going to do on the campaign trail versus when they're in office. But with that one in particular, you like I say, first is to help get them into the office by doing those things I mentioned. But the second part is holding them to task, holding their feet to the fire while they're in session. Once they actually do get elected, especially in Virginia, it's a really tight turnaround. There are part-time legislators from January to about mid-March is when it's done. So at that last, at that Cannabis Advisory Task Force meeting that you're a part of, there was also someone there with the police force, a captain, who mentioned how they don't have the resources, and I think there was something that you were going to draft to give to the city council. You stripped this language away because they didn't want to have it on the public record, but they said it at the public meeting about they don't have the resources to enforce like Delta 8 and these other products related to that, shutting down those type of businesses.
And you
And
said,
and
and
I said, well, they've been having the resources for decades now to arrest people when cannabis possessions were highly illegal. Virginia used to have one of the highest arrest rates for it prior to that laws changing in 2020.
I
And
love
I
that.
asked
I mean,
them,
and
and I
you're not
said,
wrong
your
there.
bill hasn't, your budget hasn't gotten smaller over the years, has it? And he said, no, sir. And so I said, like, is there really that much proliferation of Delta 8 that surpassed how it was with cannabis in the
I mean,
past or fentanyl? I really don't believe that
basically,
to
Mike,
be the
you're like,
case.
I loved it because you were like stood up and said, well, somehow you had the resources to, arrest 30,000 people a year before, but suddenly now, when we need your help, you don't have the resources, and I was like, I just thought that comparison, you're not wrong there. You're not wrong, but yes, it's different resources and whatever, but you know, to regulate this, we have to rely on the law enforcement to enforce the laws for this.
Yeah, because I mean, yeah, I mean, if I bet if you ask the local MSOs here, they are in Virginia, they'll say, "Hey, these Delta 8, they're hurting our bottom line, which makes it harder for people to get, help the legal businesses thrive." So these people who are abusing the hemp laws are really taking money from people who are trying to do legitimate businesses, and that
And
would
I mean,
include
this
in
is
recreational businesses. If those get off the ground, they're going
right.
to have the same
They're
issues
holding
with them.
everything back. That's the way I see it. They're holding
Yeah,
everyone
absolutely.
back.
On a national level too, I argue, because of how that farm bill is a national bill or law.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I loved your comment. I thought it really hit home to, truly, and I mean, and you experienced enough of that yourself and you're just like, that's funny, there were enough resources that, lots of people got arrested before, you know. But yeah,
Yeah,
it was
I
fun.
feel like the police when you see them around, it's just when there's an accident. We have so many accidents here, so many people, and it's just like, there's ways that they could address that to where they could divert those resources, and I just feel like there's this, it's a little political on the local level with law enforcement. Let's just put it that way, mildly.